The sound of
You look
camera
beautiful
shutters is
tonight.
distinct.
I'm
It
glad you
doesn't
came.
click.
I
It
wouldn't miss
bites.
this.
A mechanical snapping of jaws, hungry and relentless. Tonight outside the grand colonnade entrance of the Belmont Hotel in Charleston, that sound was a feeding frenzy. September in the Low Country carries a particular weight. The air hangs thick, humid, pressing against skin like a warm cloth soaked in jasmine and exhaust fumes. The kind of evening where breathing feels like drinking, where expensive perfume mingles with the salt from the harbor and the coming rain charges the atmosphere with electricity. Alexander Moretti stood at the edge of the red carpet, a ghost in a Tom Ford tuxedo. 30 years old, dark-haired, dark-eyed, with the kind of face that spoke of old Sicilian bloodlines and new American money. He wasn't supposed to be here. He'd been invited, certainly. Moretti Development had donated generously to the Sterling Foundation's annual gala. But Xander had spent the last 3 years of his life learning to disappear from places like this, learning to be invisible. Old habits die hard. He checked his watch. 8:17. The valets were backing up the red carpet, bottlenecking. Someone important was late. Someone the press pack was waiting for. Xander watched the exits. He watched the hands of the security guards. He listened to the pitch of noise rising like a tide. These things were instinct now carved into muscle memory by a childhood spent in rooms where the wrong door, the wrong hand, the wrong pitch meant someone didn't go home. A black Mercedes pulled to the valet stand. The door didn't open immediately. When it did, the night exploded. Flashbulbs turned humid darkness into a strobe-lit nightmare. The crowd surged forward like a single organism. Xander saw her emerge, and even from this distance, he recognized her face. Victoria Ashford, 38 years old. The crown jewel of Charleston's charity circuit. The Sterling Foundation had been her late father's legacy, and for 15 years she had run it with the kind of grace and steel that made her simultaneously beloved and untouchable. Tonight she wore champagne silk, a slip dress that caught light and turned it to liquid gold. Her dark hair was pulled back in a low chignon. She should have looked poised, regal. Instead, she looked like prey. The paparazzi weren't just taking pictures. They were surrounding her, blocking her path to the hotel doors. Victoria, is it true about the embezzled funds? Did you steal from veterans and cancer patients? Victoria looked this way. How much did you take? Xander saw her stop, saw her spine go rigid. It was a subtle movement, the kind you only catch if you've spent a lifetime reading body language for survival. She didn't shrink. She froze. Her hand went to her throat, fingers touching the thin strand of pearls there. A defensive gesture disguised as adjustment. A tell. A heavy-set photographer with a lens the size of a small cannon stepped directly into her personal space. He was shouting something about her dead father, about betrayal, about legacy turned to ash. The line between journalism and assault is defined by proximity and intent. He'd crossed it. Xander didn't run. Running causes panic, and panic spreads like fire in a crowd. Instead, he moved with fluid purpose, weaving through the gaps between bodies with a precision that felt like choreography. In another life, they'd called it the water flow. You don't push, you simply occupy the empty spaces until you are exactly where you need to be. He stepped between Victoria and the photographer. Didn't touch either of them. Just became a wall, a sudden immovable presence in gray wool and calm silence. That's enough. His voice wasn't loud. Xander had learned long ago that shouting meant you'd already lost. He spoke with flat, absolute certainty that dropped the temperature in the immediate radius by 10 degrees. The photographer blinked, startled by the obstruction. Who the hell are you? Xander held his gaze, held it until the animal part of the man's brain registered the threat assessment had changed, until he took one step back, then another. I'm the person telling you to step back. The words were quiet, final. Xander turned slightly, offering his shoulder as a visual shield for Victoria, but not looking at her yet. The valet stand is blocked. We're going to walk to the side entrance. Keep your eyes on my back. He didn't wait for permission. In a crisis, you don't ask, you direct. They moved. Xander carved a path using nothing but presence and the careful placement of his shoulders. The shouts followed them. Thief, liar, coward. But the physical pressure broke and they rounded the corner into a cobblestone alley lined with palmetto trees and Spanish moss. The noise of the street muffled. The adrenaline dump is a physical thing. Xander heard Victoria's breath hit sharp and ragged. Her heel caught on uneven stone and she stumbled. He stopped, turned, gave her space. They were far enough away now. The streetlights here were amber and old, casting everything in sepia tones like a photograph from another era. Victoria didn't sit at first. She pressed her back against the rough bark of a massive live oak palms, flat breathing through her nose like she was forcing order back into her body. When she lifted her face, the expression was complex, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The kind of look that says, I'm still standing even if my legs are shaking. Then gravity won. She slid down the trunk until she was sitting on the curb, champagne silk pooling around her on dirty concrete. It was an ungraceful, desperate collapse that told Xander exactly how heavy the last 10 minutes had been. He sat down opposite her, keeping respectful distance, rested his forearms on his knees, looked at her properly for the first time. She was beautiful, yes. Dark eyes, elegant bone structure, the kind of face that belonged on old money and older portraits. But that wasn't what struck him. It was the exhaustion. It lived in the corners of her eyes, a deep bruising fatigue that no amount of concealer could hide. She looked like someone who'd been holding up a collapsing ceiling with bare hands for far too long. You're Alexander Moretti, she said. Her voice was steadier than he expected. The developer. I am. Did my board hire you? No. I was just thirsty. A sound escaped her, half laugh, half sob. She tilted her head back against the tree, looking up at the Spanish moss hanging like ghosts in the branches above. They're saying I stole it. 3.2 million from the endowment. Someone leaked internal memos this morning. It's a lie, of course, but the lie travels faster. Reputation spirals usually do, Xander said quietly. They feed on silence. She looked at him then. Really looked. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently filled with something between terror and defiance. I'm not that kind of woman, she said. The words came out fierce. Desperate. I don't steal. I don't cheat. I've spent 20 years playing by every suffocating rule this city has. I built that foundation from $50,000 to $30 million in assets. I've never taken a dime that wasn't mine. Xander studied her. He looked at the way her hands were clenched in her lap, knuckles white against champagne silk. He looked at the set of her jaw, the way she held his gaze without flinching. He didn't see a thief. He saw a woman who'd been ambushed, hunted, cornered. She said, I'm not that kind of woman, Xander repeated, testing the weight of the words. She blinked. What? You just said it. You're trying to convince me. I have to convince everyone. No, you don't have to convince me. He leaned in just an inch, dropped his voice to that register he used when he needed someone to believe him more than they believed their own fear. Your eyes say otherwise, Victoria. You're not the kind of woman who stole the money. You're the kind of woman who's going to find out who did. The air between them shifted. It wasn't electricity. It was gravity. The chaotic spin of the evening suddenly finding an axis point. I need help, she whispered. The admission clearly tasted like ash. I know, Xander said, and you're going to get it. But first you need to get up off this curb. 24 hours later, Victoria Ashford sat in Xander's downtown office, a converted warehouse in the historic district with exposed brick and too much light. She'd done her research overnight. Of course she had. Victoria didn't accept help from strangers, especially not strangers who materialized out of crowds like guardian angels. Moretti Development, 15 properties across the Southeast. Commercial real estate, high-end residential conversions, 3 historic preservation projects. Legitimate, profitable, clean. Alexander Moretti, CEO, 30 years old. Columbia University dual degree in economics and urban planning. No criminal record. No scandals, no wives, no public relationships, no messy tabloid presence. But Victoria had lived in Charleston long enough to know that the absence of information was information itself. So she dug deeper and found the other name, Giovanni Moretti, Xander's grandfather, 80 years old, retired. The word retired doing heavy lifting in that sentence because before retirement, Giovanni had been many things. Labor organizer, union boss, philanthropist. And if certain sealed court documents from the 70s and 80s were to be believed, something else entirely. The kind of man whose charitable donations were always accepted, whose handshake carried weight, whose name still opened doors and closed mouths. Victoria knew that name because her father had known that name. Judge Marcus Ashford had been a federal judge for 30 years, and 30 years ago he'd made a choice. A young Giovanni Moretti facing racketeering charges had walked into his courtroom. The evidence was thin, circumstantial. The prosecution's star witness had recanted. Her father could have thrown the book at him, could have made an example. Instead, he'd offered a deal, suspended sentence, community service, a chance. Giovanni had taken it, built an empire, legitimate or close enough, donated millions to schools, hospitals, community centers, became the kind of power broker who wielded influence without violence. Victoria's father had believed in second chances, had believed that sometimes the system could do more than punish. It could redeem. She wondered if Alexander Moretti knew that story, if he knew the debt his family owed hers. "You're thinking very hard," Xander said from the doorway. He'd changed out of the tuxedo into dark jeans and a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows. More casual, but somehow the shift made him seem more dangerous, not less. Like he'd taken off a disguise. "I'm thinking," Victoria said carefully, "about why you helped me last night. Because you needed help. Men like you don't just appear at charity galas. Men like me," Xander repeated, a slight edge creeping into his voice. "What kind of man is that? The kind who knows how to move through a crowd like water. The kind who can make a 200-pound man back down with a look. The kind whose grandfather built an empire on second chances and old loyalties." Xander went very still. Then he crossed to the window, looked out at the street below. "My grandfather is 80 years old," he said quietly. "He gardens. He donates to church raffles. He hasn't been in a courtroom in 3 decades. "I know, my father saw to that." The silence stretched. Xander turned. "You know." Victoria met his eyes. "I know Judge Marcus Ashford gave Giovanni Moretti a choice when he could have given him a cage. And I know Giovanni took that choice and built something honorable with it. So my question isn't why you were at the gala. My question is why you're here now in this office, talking to me instead of pretending last night never happened." Xander studied her for a long moment. Then he moved to his desk, pulled a business card from the drawer, and held it out. Victoria took it. The card was simple, elegant. Alexander Moretti, crisis management consultant. A phone number, nothing else. "Crisis management," she said. "I help people when the walls are closing in, when the normal channels fail, when reputation and reality stop matching and the gap becomes a weapon. And why would you help me? Because 30 years ago, your father gave my grandfather back his life." Xander's voice was low, steady. "Every building my family owns, every legitimate dollar we've made, every scholarship Giovanni's foundation funds, it all started with a courtroom on a Tuesday morning when your father chose mercy over vengeance." Victoria felt something tighten in her chest. "My father believed people could change. He was right. Giovanni spent 30 years proving him right." The words hung in the air. "So this is debt," Victoria said quietly. "Honor. It's a chance to return what was given, and maybe to prove that his faith wasn't misplaced in any of us." Victoria looked down at the card in her hand. Her thumb traced the embossed lettering. What would this arrangement entail? Full investigation. Digital forensics, financial audit, background checks on anyone with access to the foundation systems. "I have people who are very good at finding things others want to stay hidden. Legal people, retired people." Victoria's mouth twitched. "That's a diplomatic answer." "I've spent 3 years building a legitimate consulting firm," Xander said. "I don't break laws, but I know people who remember when different rules applied. They help me because they owe Giovanni, or because they want to. The methods are clean, the sources are unimpeachable. And what do you get out of this? The knowledge that a debt is paid, that your father's faith in second chances wasn't wasted. That's all." Xander held her gaze. "That's all." Victoria stood, walked to the window, looked out at the Charleston skyline, church spires, and Harbor Crane's old money and new development all tangled together. "If I say yes," she said, "I'm trusting you with everything. My reputation, my foundation, my freedom. I know you could destroy me. I could, but I won't." She turned. "How can you be sure? Because destroying you would prove your father wrong. And I've spent my entire life trying to prove him right." The truth of it sat between them. Victoria took a breath, then another, then extended her hand. "All right, Mr. Moretti, let's find out who's trying to bury me." Xander took her hand. His grip was warm, steady, certain. "Call me Xander," he said, "and we start by moving you somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, somewhere you can think clearly while I work. I have a house, which is currently surrounded by news vans. True, I have a property on Kiowa Island. Private, secure. No one knows I own it except Giovanni and my attorney. You want me to hide. I want you to breathe. There's a difference." Victoria looked at their hands still clasped. She should pull away. This was too much trust too quickly. But something in his steady gaze, the quiet certainty of his presence, made her feel anchored for the first time in 24 hours. "How long? As long as it takes. And you'll find who did this. I'll find them. And then I'll give you enough evidence to bury them 6 feet under the courthouse." Legally. A ghost of a smile. Always legally, Ms. Ashford. She pulled her hand back. Then I suppose I should pack a bag. The Moretti house on Kishawa Island wasn't what Victoria expected. She'd braced herself for ostentatious wealth. Marble columns, gilded fixtures, the kind of new money excess that compensated for old-world ghosts. Instead, Xander drove them down a narrow lane lined with live oaks to a weathered, gray-shingled cottage perched on the dunes. It was small, elegant, all clean lines and tall windows facing the Atlantic, the kind of house that whispered instead of shouted. My grandmother's house, Xander said, killing the engine. She left it to me when she passed. Giovanni won't come here anymore. Too many memories. It's beautiful. It's quiet. That's what matters right now. Inside, the space was spare but warm. Hardwood floors, white walls, furniture that looked like it had been chosen for comfort instead of impression. Photographs lined the mantel above the fireplace. A younger Giovanni, still broad-shouldered and fierce-eyed, standing with a petite woman whose smile could light rooms. The same woman, older gray-haired, holding a dark-haired boy who had to be Xander. Your grandmother, Victoria said softly. Lucia, she died when I was 15. Cancer. I'm sorry. Xander was quiet for a moment, looking at the photographs. She was the one who made Giovanni believe legitimate was possible. She was a teacher, taught elementary school for 40 years, never cared about the money or the past, just kept showing up doing the work, proving that ordinary goodness mattered. She sounds remarkable. She was the reason I went to college instead of following the old path. Used to tell me, Alexander, you have a choice. You can be what they expect or what they never saw coming. Choose surprise. Victoria smiled. Sounds like she and my father would have gotten along. Maybe, though I think she'd have lectured him about working too hard. My father didn't know how to do anything else. The shared understanding passed between them like a current. Xander showed her the guest room, simple and clean, with white linens and a view of the ocean. The kitchen was stocked. The Wi-Fi password was written on the fridge. He'd thought of everything. I'll be working from here for the next few days, he said. My investigator will start pulling financial records tomorrow. In the meantime, you should rest, eat, sleep. Let yourself stop running for 5 minutes. I don't know how to do that. Learn. Because the next few weeks are going to require clarity, and you won't have it if you're operating on adrenaline and fear. He was right. Victoria knew he was right, but the idea of stillness felt dangerous. Like if she stopped moving, everything would catch up and crush her. Xander must have seen it in her face because his expression softened. You're safe here, he said. No one is coming. No one knows where you are. The walls aren't closing in tonight. I promise. How can you promise that? Because I'm not letting them? The certainty in his voice was almost painful. Victoria nodded, tried to smile. Thank you. He left her alone. She stood at the window watching the waves roll in under a moon that turned the ocean to hammered silver. Somewhere in Charleston, her name was being dragged through mud. Her foundation was bleeding donors. Her life's work was unraveling. But here in this small cottage that smelled of salt and old memories, she felt something she hadn't felt in days. Hope. The investigation began in earnest the next morning. Xander worked from the dining table laptop, open phone perpetually at his ear, a legal pad covered in notes beside him. Victoria watched him orchestrate from the kitchen, making coffee, trying to stay out of the way. He was methodical, precise. Every call was short, every instruction clear. She heard names. Sienna, Marcus, Chen. People who owed Giovanni or Xander, or simply wanted to help. By noon, the first reports arrived. Financial records from the Sterling Foundation, going back 5 years. Device access logs, IP addresses, email metadata, a digital trail that looked like gibberish to Victoria but made Xander's jaw tighten. Talk to me, she said, setting a sandwich in front of him that he hadn't asked for but needed. He looked up, eyes sharp. Someone has been very careful. The missing transfers happened over 18 months. Small enough not to trigger automatic audits. Large enough to add up. 3.2 million. Exactly. And the device tokens don't match your laptop or phone. So someone else was logging in as me, or using credentials that made it look like you. Xander scrolled through data. But here's what's interesting. Every single transfer happened within 5 minutes of a board email thread. Same timing pattern, same urgency language. What does that mean? It means someone on your board knew exactly when you'd be distracted, when you'd be focused on emergency votes or donor crises, when you wouldn't notice an extra transaction in the noise. Victoria sat down heavily. Who? That's what we're going to find out. He pulled up a list of names. 7 board members. Victoria knew them all. had worked with them for years, trusted them. The idea that one of them had been systematically destroying her felt like betrayal and violation tangled together. Richard Calloway, Xander said quietly, pointing to a name. Investment banker. On the board for 6 years. Pushed through 3 emergency budget votes in the last 18 months. Richard has always been aggressive about financial oversight. It's why we brought him on, and it's perfect cover for someone who wants access without suspicion. You think it's him. I think his name appears in the metadata more than anyone else's. I think he has motive, means, and opportunity. But I don't think yet. I know when I can prove it. Victoria stared at the name. Richard Calloway. Mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suits. Husband, father of 2 deacon at St. Philip's. He'd been at her husband's funeral. Had sent flowers on the anniversary of his death. If it's him, she said slowly, why would he do this? That, Xander said, is what I'm going to find out. The storm came on the 3rd night. Victoria had been reading in the living room, trying to distract herself with a novel that couldn't hold her attention. Xander was in the kitchen making pasta from scratch because apparently crisis management consultants also cooked. The wind picked up first, then the rain hammering the roof like fists. The power flickered, then died. The darkness was sudden and absolute. Victoria's breath caught. She stood disoriented, pulse spiking. Stay there, Xander's voice came from the kitchen, calm and steady. I have a flashlight. A beam of light cut through the dark. He appeared in the doorway holding a heavy mag light. Just a breaker, he said, moving toward her. Or a line down? Generator will kick in any second. It didn't. The silence was thick, broken only by wind and rain. Victoria felt the walls closing in the dark, pressing down like a physical weight. I hate this, she whispered. The dark, yes. Xander moved closer but stopped 3 feet away. The boundary. Always the boundary. It reminds you of something. It wasn't a question. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself. My husband died at night. Car accident on a back road with no streetlights. They said he was alone, that he lost control, that it was quick, but I keep thinking about those last moments in the dark. If he was scared, if he called for help and no one heard. Her voice cracked. Xander was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke low and steady. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. I can promise I'm here right now. Look at me. She turned. In the ambient spill of the flashlight, his face was half shadow, half gold. His eyes were dark, steady, anchored. You're not alone in the dark, he said. Not tonight, not while I'm standing here. Victoria wanted to reach out, wanted to close the distance, wanted someone to hold the weight for just 5 minutes. But she didn't, couldn't, not yet. Instead, Xander stepped back, gave her space, moved to the fireplace. We need warmth, he said, voice practical, grounding. There's wood out back. I'll get a fire going. You find candles, drawer by the sink. He gave her a task. Work as antidote to panic. Victoria nodded, swallowing hard. Candles, right. 10 minutes later, fire crackled in the hearth. Candles dotted the room. The storm raged outside, but inside warmth pushed the darkness back into corners. They sat on the floor backs against the couch, eating the pasta Xander had salvaged before the power died. You're good at this, Victoria said, watching flames dance, managing chaos. Chaos is easy. It has patterns. People are harder. Do you have someone waiting for you when you come home from cases like this? No. Why not? Xander was quiet, staring into the fire. Because this work requires all of me. If I'm worrying about someone at home, I'm not focused on the person who needs help. And if I'm not focused, people get hurt. So you chose the work over life. I thought the work was the life. And now I'm starting to wonder if I missed something. The admission hung in the air between them. Victoria looked at his profile, firelight painting shadows in gold across strong features. This man who'd appeared out of nowhere, who carried debts of honor like shields, who sat in the dark with her and didn't try to fix what couldn't be fixed with words. My husband was a good man, she said softly. Safe, predictable. I married him because everyone said I should, because it made sense, because at 24 I thought love was supposed to be comfortable. Was it? No. She smiled sadly. It was lonely. But I told myself that was what marriage was, that passion was for romance novels, that I was being realistic. Do you regret it? I regret that I never asked myself what I actually wanted. I just did what was expected, what was safe, and now nothing is safe, and maybe that's not the worst thing. She looked at him. He was watching her expression, unreadable. Slowly, carefully, Victoria reached out and placed her hand on the floor, not touching his, just putting it there in the space between them. A coordinate, an invitation. Xander looked at her hand, then at her face. The moment stretched. Then he picked up the poker, adjusted a log, sent sparks spiraling up the chimney. "We should sleep," he said, voice rougher than before. "Tomorrow we go on the offensive." Victoria pulled her hand back. "Right, of course." But as she moved toward the guest room, she glanced back. Xander was still staring into the fire jaw, tight shoulders tense. A man at war with himself. She recognized the battlefield. She was standing on the same one. The next morning brought sun and answers. Xander's investigator, a woman named Sienna, who appeared via video call with purple hair and 3 monitors behind her, had found the connection. Richard Calloway's assistant's laptop, she said, pulling up device fingerprints. Same token across 8 transfers. He made her sign in for him when he didn't want his name directly attached. "Can we prove that?" Victoria asked. "The access logs placed the laptop in the Foundation offices when you were in board meetings," Sienna said. "Security camera footage confirms Calloway's assistant at her desk during those exact timestamps. We have communication records between them discussing the transactions." She pulled up an email. Subject line, "Per your request, moving funds to satellite account." "That's it," Xander said quietly. "That's the evidence." Victoria stared at the screen, felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. Why, she asked. Richard is wealthy. He doesn't need the money. Xander had been quiet, working on something else. Now he looked up. "I had someone pull his financials. He's leveraged to his eyeballs. Real estate deals that went south, margin calls, debt. Your foundation's endowment was liquid capital he could access and hide behind your reputation while he covered his losses." Victoria felt sick. "He was going to let me take the fall for his greed." "Yes, for how long?" "Until it stuck. Until you were ruined and he walked away clean." Anger blazed through her, hot and clarifying. "Then we burn him down," she said. "Legally," Xander amended, "we do it clean. Evidence Auditors Council. No shortcuts." Victoria met his eyes. No shortcuts. They were packing files when the knock came. Xander moved fast, hand going to his phone, but he's shifting to block Victoria from the door. "Stay here," he said quietly. He crossed to the entrance, checked the window, then relaxed fractionally, opened the door. A young woman stood on the porch. Late 20s, dark hair and a sleek bob designer suit, expensive heels sinking into sand. "Bella," Xander said, surprise and something else in his voice. The woman stepped inside, looked around, then locked eyes with Victoria. "You must be Victoria Ashford," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Isabella Moretti, Xander's sister." Victoria shook, feeling off balance. "I didn't know Xander had a sister. He doesn't talk about me much. Probably because I'm the successful, well-adjusted one." "Bella runs a PR firm in Atlanta," Xander said dryly. "What are you doing here?" She looked at him, and her expression shifted from playful to serious. "Saving your life, possibly. We need to talk." She pulled out her phone, showed them a photo. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but clear enough. Xander and Victoria, standing on the cottage porch. The angle made it look intimate, damning. "This hasn't been published yet," Isabella said. "But it will be, tomorrow morning, every major outlet. The headline is already written, Mafia Princess and Her Protector, or some variation." Victoria felt the floor tilt. "Who sent this to you?" Xander asked, voice deadly calm. "A journalist I know. Gave me a heads up because she knows you're trying to go legitimate. The source is anonymous, but the metadata points to someone with access to long-range surveillance equipment in a Charleston IP address." Calloway, Victoria breathed. "Probably. Or someone working for him." Isabella looked between them. "If this goes public, it doesn't matter if you prove his guilt. Your credibility is destroyed. He wins by making you the story instead of the evidence." Xander was already moving, thinking. "We go public first. Control the narrative." "How?" Victoria asked. "Live television," Isabella said. "You do an interview. You present the evidence. You own the story before the story owns you. And what do I say about him?" Victoria gestured to Xander. "The truth," Isabella said simply. "That he's helping you. That his grandfather owes your father a debt of honor. That you're not lovers, you're allies. Will anyone believe that if you say it with enough conviction?" "Yes." Victoria looked at Xander. His jaw was tight, eyes dark. "This will hurt you," she said quietly. "Your business, your reputation, everything you've built. I know, you should walk away. Cut ties. Protect yourself." He held her gaze. "I'm not walking away." "Xander, I'm not walking away, Victoria. Not from this. Not from you." The words hung in the air. Isabella cleared her throat. "So that's decided. I'll set up the interview. My contact at Channel 7 owes me a favor. We can go live tomorrow night. Prime time. Tomorrow, Victoria felt panic rise. It has to be fast, Isabella said gently. Once that photo drops, you're reacting. This way, you're ahead of it. Xander moved to Victoria's side, not touching but close. You can do this, he said. You've been doing hard things your whole life. This is just one more. Victoria looked at him, at Isabella, at the evidence spread across the table that could save her reputation or destroy it if she wasn't careful. She thought about her father, about second chances, about the faith he'd had in people who deserved it and people who didn't, about standing up when the walls were closing in. All right, she said, let's tell the truth. The photograph went viral at 6:32 in the morning. Victoria saw it first. She'd woken early, unable to sleep, and made the mistake of checking her phone. The image filled the screen, her and Xander on the cottage porch morning, light painting them gold, his hand near her shoulder, her face turned toward his. The angle made it look like a stolen moment, intimate, damning. The headline screamed across every news site, Sterling Foundation, CEO's secret affair with alleged Mafia heir, subheading, is this who she paid with charity dollars? Victoria's hands shook. The coffee cup she'd been holding slipped, shattered on the kitchen floor. Xander appeared in the doorway, already dressed, phone in hand. His face was carved from stone. I'm sorry, he said. The words were so quiet she almost didn't hear them over the roaring in her ears. By 8 a.m., the foundation's board had called an emergency meeting. By 9, Victoria's lawyer had forwarded 17 resignation demands from major donors. By 10, the board's official statement hit the wire. The Sterling Foundation Board of Directors expects full transparency and accountability from all staff, including leadership. We are conducting an internal review of recent allegations. The knife dressed up as due diligence. Victoria stood in the cottage living room, staring at her laptop screen, watching her life's work crumble in real time. Her phone rang. Board chair, the screen read, Margaret Whitmore, 70 years old, Old Charleston money, sharp as cut glass. Victoria answered. Margaret's voice was clipped, professional, cold. Victoria, dear, we need to discuss your position. What position would that be? Margaret, as CEO of the Sterling Foundation. Given recent developments, the board feels it would be prudent for you to take a leave of absence while we investigate. A leave of absence. Victoria's voice was flat. That's code for resignation, isn't it? It's code for protecting the foundation's reputation. If the allegations are false, you'll be vindicated. But until then, your association with Mr. Moretti is creating an optics problem we cannot ignore. An optics problem. Victoria looked across the room. Xander was standing by the window, back, rigid, hands shoved in his pockets, listening to every word. And if I refuse the leave of absence, then the board will have no choice but to call for a vote of no confidence. A pause. I don't want to do that, Victoria. But I have a fiduciary responsibility. To the foundation or to Richard Calloway. The silence on the other end was sharp as a blade. Excuse me, Richard has been pushing for my removal since the scandal broke. Quite aggressively from what I hear. Almost like he knew it was coming. Margaret's voice cooled another 10 degrees. That is a serious accusation. Yes, it is. And I have evidence to back it up. Evidence that will be made public very soon. So I suggest, Margaret, that you tell the board to hold that vote, because when the truth comes out, they're going to want to be on the right side of it. Victoria hung up. Her hands were shaking again, but this time with rage instead of fear. Xander turned from the window. That was bold. That was necessary. She set the phone down. They're going to crucify me, aren't they? They're going to try me. And you. What happens to you when this blows up? He crossed to her. Stopped 2 feet away. The boundary they'd been maintaining, the careful distance, suddenly felt like a canyon. I knew the cost when I took this case, he said quietly. I'm not afraid of it. You should be. Your business, your reputation, everything you've built to prove you're not your grandfather's legacy, it's all going to burn. Then it burns. Xander, he took one step closer. His voice dropped, steady and absolute. Listen to me. I have spent 30 years trying to be clean, legitimate, acceptable, trying to prove that the name Moretti didn't have to mean what it used to mean. But you know what I learned, what? That the people who want to believe the worst will find reasons no matter what you do. That trying to outrun your past is exhausting. And that maybe, just maybe, the right thing is worth more than the safe thing. The air between them hummed. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest, a fault line she'd been holding closed for years. I can't let you sacrifice yourself for me. You're not letting me do anything. I'm making this choice. He paused, held her gaze. And I'm making it for you. The words landed differently, softer, more certain. Before Victoria could respond, the front door opened. Isabella swept in tablet in hand, heels clicking on hardwood. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Another one, Victoria asked. Isabella set the tablet on the table, pulled up a news site. The journalist who leaked the photo, her name is Diane Ross, 32, ambitious, works for Channel 7. She's been digging into the Sterling Foundation story for weeks. So she's the enemy, Victoria said. Isabella shook her head. I don't think so. I did some digging. Diane's been getting anonymous tips for the past month. Documents, emails, financial records. All pointing to you as the thief, Calloway Xander said. That's what I thought too. So I called in a favor, had someone trace the source of the tips. Guess whose personal email account they came from? Richard Calloway. Isabella smiled grimly. Bingo. Diane didn't know she was being played. She thought she was breaking a legitimate corruption story. When I showed her the evidence that Calloway was the actual embezzler, she went pale. What did she say? That she wants to help. She's willing to go on record, admit she was manipulated, and interview you live tomorrow night with full evidence disclosure. Victoria sank into a chair. This is it then. We're really doing this. We're really doing this, Isabella confirmed. I'll handle the production details. You two focus on the evidence package and the story you're going to tell. She left as quickly as she'd arrived. Victoria looked at Xander. Tomorrow night I have to stand in front of cameras and defend myself, defend you. Admit that I trusted the wrong people and nearly lost everything. Yes. What if they don't believe me? Then we keep fighting. We go to the next venue, the next outlet, the next forum until someone listens. And if no one does, Xander sat down across from her, leaned forward, elbows on knees. Then we'll have tried, and you'll know you didn't go quietly. You'll know you fought back. Sometimes that's all we get. Victoria wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that truth mattered more than optics, that evidence could overcome narrative. But she'd lived in this world long enough to know better. That afternoon, a black town car pulled up to the cottage. Xander saw it first. Tensed, moved to the door before the visitor could knock. When he opened it, Victoria heard him exhale. Giovanni, an old man, stepped inside. 80 years old, but still broad-shouldered, still commanding. Silver hair, sharp eyes, a face that had seen everything and forgiven some of it. He wore a cardigan and slacks, looked like someone's grandfather. Was someone's nightmare once upon a time, Alexander, Giovanni said. His voice was gravel and honey. We need to talk. Victoria stood uncertain. Should I? No, Xander said. Stay. He looked at his grandfather. Whatever you have to say, she should hear it. Giovanni's gaze shifted to Victoria, assessed her with the precision of a jeweler examining a stone. Miss Ashford, your father was a good man, fair, thank you. He gave me a second chance when he could have buried me. I've spent 30 years honoring that gift, I know. Do you? Giovanni moved into the room, slow and deliberate. Do you know what it cost him, the political capital he spent, the colleagues who called him soft, the prosecutors who never forgave him for letting me walk? Victoria met his eyes. My father believed in redemption. He paid that cost willingly. Perhaps. Giovanni sat in the armchair by the fireplace. And now my grandson is paying a cost for you. His reputation, his business, his future. The words landed like stones. Xander's jaw tightened. This isn't her fault, isn't it? Giovanni looked at Victoria. You came to him because you needed help, because you knew who we were and what we could do. You used that connection. Victoria felt heat rise in her face. I came to him because I had nowhere else to go, because the system failed me and I was desperate. Desperation makes us do foolish things. Is that what this is to you? Foolish. Giovanni was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. No, it's honorable. Reckless but honorable. He looked at Xander. But honor has a price, Alexander. And I'm not sure you've counted the case. I have. Have you? Because there's another way to handle this. The old way. Xander went very still. No. Richard Calloway is a problem. Problems can be solved. Not that way, not anymore. Giovanni's expression didn't change. He heard her. He's trying to destroy her. Men like that don't stop unless they're stopped. Victoria's blood ran cold. She understood what was being offered. She also understood what Xander was refusing. No, she said, voice steady. We don't do it that way. Giovanni looked at her. You're certain? I'm certain. My father believed there was always another way. A legal way, a right way. And I believe it too. Even when the legal way fails, especially then. Because if we become what we're fighting against, we've already lost. The silence stretched. Then Giovanni smiled. It was small, sad, but genuine. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. He stood, walked to Xander, placed a hand on his shoulder. You chose well, Alexander. Don't lose her. He left without another word. Victoria waited until the car pulled away before she spoke. What was that? That was my grandfather offering to kill Richard Calloway. She'd known. But hearing it said aloud still made her stomach turn. And you said no. Xander turned to face her. I've spent 3 years proving I'm not that person anymore. I'm not going back. Not even for this. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We're fighting this with evidence and words, against a man who's already proven he'll burn everything down to save himself. There's always another way, Victoria said, echoing her own words. My father believed that. So do I. Xander looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Then we'd better make sure that way works. They worked through the evening, refining the evidence package, rehearsing talking points, preparing for every angle Diane Ross might take. Isabella called twice with updates. The interview was confirmed. Primetime live broadcast. No delays, no edits. By 9 p.m., Victoria's eyes were burning from staring at financial spreadsheets. Her head ached. Her whole body felt like a clenched fist. Enough, Xander said, closing her laptop. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. You haven't eaten since breakfast. You need fuel. She wanted to argue, but he was right. She was running on fumes and adrenaline. He moved to the kitchen, started pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. Fresh fish, lemon herbs, white wine. Simple things. Victoria watched him work, watched the way his hands moved confident and precise, the way he fell into the rhythm of cooking like meditation. Where did you learn to do that, she asked. My grandmother used to say that a man who could feed himself could take care of anyone. She taught you well. He glanced over his shoulder. She taught me a lot of things, how to be patient, how to listen, how to choose surprise over expectation. Choose surprise, Victoria repeated. I like that. She lived it. Married a man everyone said was dangerous, saw something no one else did, and spent 40 years proving them wrong. Did she? He smiled small and genuine, every single day. They ate at the kitchen counter pan-seared fish with herbs and lemon-crusty bread, white wine that tasted like summer evenings. It was simple, quiet, normal. Victoria couldn't remember the last time anything had felt normal. Can I ask you something, she said. Always, why did you really take this case, the truth? Xander set down his fork. The debt of honor. That's real, but I also wanted to see if I could use everything I learned from that world and make it serve something good. Prove that the skills don't define the person. The choice does. And now I know, he looked at her. And I'm glad I made the choice I did, even though it's cost you, especially because of that. Because the things worth having usually cost more than we want to pay. And you, Victoria Ashford, are worth every bit of it. The words settled between them like a vow. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. No one had said anything like that to her in years, maybe ever. I've been alone for so long, she whispered. I forgot what it felt like to have a partner. Someone who sees me, who chooses to stay even when staying is hard. You're not alone. Xander's voice was low rough. Not anymore. He stood, moved around the counter, stopped in front of her. And after this is over, he said, if you'll have me, you never will be again. The declaration hung in the air. Victoria looked up at him, saw the truth in his eyes, the steadiness, the absolute certainty. She stood. The space between them disappeared. When she kissed him, it wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was certain. A claim and a promise and a choice all at once. His hands came up to frame her face, gentle and reverent, like she was something precious he'd been afraid to touch. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Victoria rested her forehead against his. I'm terrified, she admitted. I know. What if tomorrow doesn't work? What if we lose? Then we lose together. And we figure out what comes next. Together. The word wrapped around her like armor. Together. The discovery came at 2 a.m. Victoria couldn't sleep. Too much adrenaline, too many thoughts spinning. She'd gotten up, made tea, wandered into the living room where Xander had left his laptop open. The screen was still showing financial records. Calloway's transfers, IP logs, device tokens. But there was another file open underneath. One she hadn't seen before. Case file Thomas Ashford. Death investigation. Closed. Her husband's name. Victoria's hand trembled as she clicked it open. The report was standard. Single vehicle accident. Wet roads. Driver lost control. No signs of foul play. But attached to it was a separate document. A private investigator's report dated 3 months after Thomas's death, commissioned by someone whose name was redacted. The report detailed anomalies, brake line wear that didn't match the car's service history, tool marks consistent with tampering. A witness who saw another vehicle near the scene but was never interviewed by police. The conclusion: accident classification likely incorrect. Recommend further investigation. The recommendation had been ignored. Victoria's vision blurred. Her chest felt like it was caving in. Thomas hadn't died in an accident. He'd been killed. Footsteps behind her. Xander drawn by the light. Victoria. What's wrong? She couldn't speak, just pointed at the screen. Xander had read it. His expression went dark, dangerous. When did you get this? Sienna sent it 3 days ago. I was waiting to confirm before I showed you. Confirm what? That Richard Calloway ordered it. The words were a bomb. Victoria stood, stumbled back. No, that's not possible. Xander pulled up another file. Security footage from a parking garage. Date stamped 3 years and 2 weeks ago. The video showed Richard Calloway meeting with a man, money changing hands. Calloway pointing to a photograph. Thomas's photograph. 2 weeks later, Thomas was dead. Victoria felt the world tilt. Felt every assumption she'd built her grief on shatter. Why? She choked out. Why would he kill Thomas? Because Thomas was blocking him. Xander pulled up board meeting minutes from 3 years ago. Your husband voted against Calloway's proposal to restructure the foundation's investment portfolio. If that restructuring had gone through, Calloway would have had direct access to the endowment months earlier. So he killed him to get control of the foundation and to position himself as your advisor in your grief, to be the voice you trusted when you were vulnerable. Victoria's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch. All of it, the sympathy, the flowers, the offers to help manage things while she recovered. All of it had been manipulation, predation. I'm going to kill him, she heard herself say. No. Xander's voice was sharp. You're not. He murdered my husband, I know. And we're going to prove it. Legally. We're going to put him in a cage where he belongs. That's not enough. It has to be. Xander knelt in front of her, took her hands. Because if you go after him the other way, you become what he is. And I won't let that happen. Your father wouldn't let that happen. My father's not here, but I am, and I'm telling you there's another way. The right way. Victoria looked at him through tears. The right way got my husband killed. The wrong way gets you arrested or dead. And then Calloway wins everything. She knew he was right, hated that he was right. But the rage burning in her chest wanted blood, not justice. Xander must have seen it because his grip tightened. Turn it into fuel, he said. Turn it into determination. Walk into that studio tomorrow and destroy him with the truth. Make him face what he's done in front of the whole city. That's the revenge that lasts. Victoria closed her eyes. Breathed through the fury until it settled into something harder. Colder. Determination. When she opened her eyes, they were clear. All right, she said. We do it your way. But when this is over, when he's in prison, I want him to know it was me. I want him to see my face and know exactly who put him there. Xander nodded. That I can promise. The next day was preparation. Isabella arrived early with a stylist, a media coach, and 3 changes of clothes. Victoria submitted to it all. The makeup, the hair, the rehearsal questions, became someone polished and armor-plated. But inside, she was molten steel. Xander stayed close. Not hovering, but present. A steady anchor point. At 4 p.m., Isabella gathered them in the living room. Here's how this works, she said. Diane will lead with the scandal. The photos, the allegations. You address them head on. No deflection, no spin, just truth. And then you present the evidence. Device logs, financial transfers, the timeline. You make it clear that Calloway is the thief, not you. And Xander, he sits beside you. Victoria looked at Xander. If you're comfortable with that, I wouldn't be anywhere else. Isabella nodded. Good, because solidarity matters. The story isn't just about exposing Calloway. It's about showing that you have nothing to hide, that you're not running from your choices. What about Thomas? Victoria asked quietly. Do I mention what we found? Not yet, Isabella said. That's a criminal investigation. If you go public now, you could compromise it. Let the authorities handle that piece first. Victoria hated it, but she understood. 6 p.m., Isabella said. Car picks you up at 5:30. Don't eat anything heavy. Stay hydrated. And Victoria, yes, you're going to be brilliant. They had 1 hour before they had to leave. Victoria stood on the cottage porch watching the sun sink toward the ocean. The light turned everything gold and amber, painted the waves in fire. Xander joined her. Didn't speak. Just stood beside her. I'm ready, Victoria said. I know. I'm going to destroy him. I know that too. She turned and looked at him. And after, when this is over and the dust settles, we figure out what comes next. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. Maybe we take a vacation, somewhere quiet, somewhere no one knows our names. That sounds perfect. Or maybe we stay here, build something new, the kind of life we choose instead of the one we inherited. Victoria smiled. I like that better. The sun touched the horizon, set the world ablaze. Whatever happens tonight, Xander said, I want you to know something. What I'm proud of you, of your strength, of your refusal to break even when everything conspired to shatter you. Victoria felt her throat tighten. Thank you for seeing me, for choosing to stay. Always, he said. The word was a promise. They stood there, hands clasped, watching the sun disappear. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, in this moment, they were exactly where they needed to be. Together, the Channel 7 studios smelled of coffee and electric anticipation. Victoria sat in the green room, hands folded in her lap, wearing navy blue. High neck, long sleeves, severe lines. A suit of armor disguised as Chanel. Her makeup was flawless, her hair pulled back in a low twist. She looked every inch the CEO, controlled, unbreakable. Inside, her heart was a war drum. Isabella paced near the door, phone pressed to her ear, managing last-minute details. The evidence package had been delivered to Diane Ross an hour ago. Financial records, device logs, security footage. Everything laid out in irrefutable sequence. Xander stood by the window watching the parking lot. He changed into a charcoal suit, white shirt, no tie. Formal enough to show respect, casual enough to seem approachable. But Victoria saw the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was set. He was preparing for battle, too. 5 minutes, a production assistant called from the doorway. Victoria stood, smoothed her skirt, drew in a breath that tasted like copper and determination. Xander turned from the window, crossed to her. You ready? No, but I'm going anyway. He smiled, small and genuine. That's all courage ever is. Isabella appeared at Victoria's side, pressed something into her hand. A photograph, old edges worn soft. What is this? Your father, Isabella said. The day he was sworn in as a federal judge. I pulled it from the public archives. Thought you might want to remember why you're doing this. Victoria looked down at the image. Her father, 40 years younger, hand raised, taking an oath. The expression on his face was one of absolute conviction. Service, integrity, justice. She slipped the photo into her jacket pocket. Over her heart. Thank you. Go show them who you are, Isabella said. The studio was cold. Bright lights, 3 cameras a desk with 2 chairs facing each other across a small table. Behind them, a projected image of the Charleston skyline at sunset. Diane Ross stood when Victoria entered. She was younger than Victoria expected. Early 30s, sharp-eyed, wearing a burgundy blazer that read serious but approachable. Ms. Ashford, she said, extending a hand. Thank you for doing this. Victoria shook it, felt the slight tremor. Diane was nervous too. I'm sorry, Diane said quietly. For my role in this, I should have verified my sources better. You were lied to, Victoria said. We both were. Diane nodded. Let's make sure everyone knows the truth. They sat. A makeup artist appeared, touched up Victoria's powder. Sound technicians clipped microphones to lapels. 30 seconds, someone called. Victoria's pulse kicked into overdrive. The lights were too bright. The air was too cold. Everything felt hyper-real, every sensation amplified. She thought about Thomas, about her father, about the foundation she'd built, and the enemies who'd tried to destroy it. She thought about Xander waiting in the wings, and she straightened her spine. The floor director counted down. 4, 3, 2 fingers, 1. Red light. Good evening, Diane said, looking into the camera. Her voice was smooth, professional. Tonight we're sitting down with Victoria Ashford, CEO of the Sterling Foundation, who has been at the center of a financial scandal that has rocked Charleston's charitable community. Ms. Ashford, thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me. Let's address the allegations directly. $3.2 million is missing from your foundation's endowment. The evidence suggests you transferred those funds to offshore accounts. Did you know? The word was simple. Absolute. Diane leaned forward. But there are device logs with your credentials, transfers initiated from your accounts. How do you explain that? Someone used my credentials without my knowledge. Someone who had access to the foundation's systems and knew exactly when I would be too distracted to notice. Who? Richard Calloway, a member of our board of directors. Victoria reached into her folder, pulled out the first document, slid it across the table. These are device tokens, she said. Digital fingerprints that identify which computer initiated each transfer. They don't match my laptop or phone. They match a device registered to Mr. Calloway's executive assistant. Diane examined the document. And you can prove this completely. Every transfer happened within 5 minutes of a board emergency vote. Votes that Mr. Calloway himself initiated. He created urgency, created chaos, and used that cover to move money while everyone was focused elsewhere. Why would he do this? Because he needed the money. Victoria pulled out another sheet. Financial records showing Calloway's over-leveraged real estate portfolio, failed investments, margin calls, debt spiraling out of control. He was using your foundation as his personal bank. He was using my reputation as cover. And when I got too close to discovering it, he leaked false allegations to destroy my credibility before I could expose him. Diane's expression hardened. That's a serious accusation. It's a provable fact. For the next 15 minutes, Victoria walked through the evidence. Methodical, clinical. Every question Diane asked, she answered with documentation. Bank records, communication logs, security footage timestamps. The case built itself piece by piece until the conclusion was inescapable. Then Diane shifted. There's another element to this story, she said. The photographs of you with Alexander Moretti, the son of a known organized crime figure. What is your relationship with him? Victoria had prepared for this, had rehearsed the answer a dozen times. But sitting under those lights, with the cameras watching, she found herself saying something different. Alexander Moretti is the man who saved me, she said, not just from a crowd of aggressive photographers, from believing I was alone, from thinking I had to face this nightmare without help. So he is your lover, he is my partner. And before you ask if I paid him with foundation money, the answer is no. He took this case as repayment for a debt of honor. 30 years ago, my father gave his grandfather a second chance. Alexander is returning that favor. A debt of honor, Diane repeated. Yes. Victoria met the camera's eye. My father was a federal judge who believed in redemption, who believed that people were more than their worst mistakes. Alexander's grandfather proved him right, built a legitimate empire, donated millions to charity, became a pillar of this community. And Alexander is trying to do the same, to be more than his family name, to use everything he learned from that world to help people instead of hurt them. The words hung in the air. Diane opened her mouth to ask another question. The studio door opened. Xander walked in. The cameras swiveled. The director made frantic hand signals. But Xander ignored all of it. He crossed the studio floor steady and certain and sat down in the empty chair beside Victoria. Diane blinked, thrown completely off script. Mr. Moretti, this is unexpected. I apologize for the interruption, Xander said. His voice was calm, measured. But there's something that needs to be said, and it needs to be said now. He looked at Victoria. She saw the question in his eyes. Is this okay? She nodded once. Xander turned to face the camera. My name is Alexander Moretti. My grandfather was Giovanni Moretti. If you know anything about Charleston's history, you know what that name meant. What it still means to some people. He paused. Let the weight settle. I grew up in that shadow, he continued. Spent my childhood watching my grandfather try to outrun a reputation, watching him prove day after day that one judge's faith in him wasn't misplaced, that he could be more than what everyone expected. And when I was old enough to understand, I made a choice. I went to college, got degrees, built a legitimate business, did everything I could to be someone my grandmother would be proud of, someone Judge Ashford's faith could extend to. Why are you telling us this? Diane asked. Because reputation matters. Xander looked directly into the lens. And right now, Victoria's reputation is being destroyed by a man who used her kindness, her trust, and her grief as weapons, who orchestrated her husband's death 3 years ago to gain control of the foundation. The studio went silent. Diane's face went white. What did you just say? Thomas Ashford didn't die in an accident. He was murdered. On Richard Calloway's orders. Xander pulled a USB drive from his pocket, held it up. This contains security footage of Calloway meeting with a contract killer 2 weeks before Thomas died. It contains the private investigator's report that was buried. It contains forensic evidence of brake tampering that was dismissed as normal wear. Victoria's hand went to her mouth. She'd known. But hearing it said aloud on live television and made it real in a way that shattered something inside her. The FBI has this evidence, Xander continued. As of 3 hours ago, they're executing a warrant on Calloway's home and offices right now. But as if summoned, Diane's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, eyes widening. I'm getting reports, she said, of federal agents at the Calloway residence in South of Broad. Then you're getting confirmation, Xander said. He turned to Victoria. His expression softened. I'm here, he said quietly, because she deserves the truth. Because her father believed in doing things the right way even when it was hard. Even when the easy path was right there. He reached out, took her hand. And I'm here because I love her. Because in a world that tried to break her, she stayed whole, stayed kind, stayed honest. Victoria felt tears slip down her cheeks. Your eyes say otherwise, Xander said, echoing the words from that first night. They say you're not a victim, you're a survivor. And I wanted everyone to see what I see. The camera caught it all. The moment, the truth, the love laid bare under harsh studio lights. Diane's seasoned journalist looked like she might cry too. Well, she managed. I think that answers the question about your relationship. Victoria laughed through tears. I think it does. The aftermath was chaos. The broadcast went viral within minutes. Social media exploded. News outlets scrambled to cover the breaking story. By the time Victoria and Xander left the studio, Richard Calloway was in FBI custody. By midnight, the Sterling Foundation Board had issued a formal apology and unanimous vote of confidence in Victoria's leadership. By morning, donors were calling to reinstate their support. Victoria watched it all unfold from the cottage on Kiowa Island, wrapped in a blanket, Xander's arm around her shoulders. It's over, she whispered. No, he said. It's just beginning. Giovanni came to see them 2 days later. He arrived at noon carrying a bottle of wine older than Victoria in a small wooden box. Alexander, he said, Miss Ashford. They sat on the porch, the ocean wind carrying salt and the promise of spring. You did well, Giovanni said. Both of you. We did what was necessary, Xanders replied. You did what was right. There's a difference. Giovanni poured wine into 3 glasses. I spent 30 years trying to teach you that. Looks like you finally learned. I had a good teacher. You had too. Giovanni raised his glass to Victoria. Your father showed me that mercy was stronger than vengeance. You showed my grandson that love was braver than fear. Victoria felt warmth bloom in her chest. They drank. The wine tasted like sunshine and time. Giovanni set down his glass, picked up the wooden box. This belonged to Lucia, he said. My wife. She wanted Alexander to have it when he found the right woman. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple gold band, single diamond, old-fashioned and perfect. She would have liked you, Giovanni said to Victoria. Would have said you had steel in your spine and kindness in your heart. Would have told Alexander not to let you get away. Victoria looked at Xander, saw the question in his eyes. When you're both ready, Giovanni said, reading the room. There's no rush. You've earned the time to breathe. He closed the box, handed it to Xander. I'm proud of you, he said. Your grandmother would be too. Then he left them there with the ring and the ocean and the future spreading out like an open road. 6 months later, the Sterling Foundation held its annual gala. Same hotel, same ballroom, same chandeliers throwing fractured light across polished marble. But everything else was different. Victoria arrived in emerald silk, her hair loose around her shoulders. No armor tonight, no defensive postures, just confidence earned through fire. Xander walked beside her in a tuxedo, hand resting lightly at the small of her back. The cameras were there, of course, but the questions were different now. Ms. Ashford, how does it feel to be vindicated? It feels like justice. Mr. Moretti, what's next for you, whatever she needs? Are the rumors true about a merger? Victoria smiled. You'll have to wait for the announcement. They moved through the crowd. Board members approached with apologies and congratulations. Donors shook hands, pledged renewed support. The mayor himself appeared to offer formal commendation for Victoria's integrity and service. Margaret Whitmore, the board chair who demanded Victoria's resignation, approached with grace and humility. I owe you an apology, she said. I should have trusted you. Should have investigated before I condemned. You were protecting the foundation, Victoria said. I understand. Still, I'm sorry. Victoria accepted it, moved on. At 8 p.m., the ballroom quieted. Victoria took the stage. The lights dimmed. A spotlight found her. Good evening, she began. Thank you all for being here, for standing with the Sterling Foundation through what has been a challenging year. Applause rippled through the room. 6 months ago, she continued, I stood accused of crimes I didn't commit. My reputation was destroyed. My life's work was in jeopardy. I could have walked away, could have let the lies win. She paused. But my father taught me that the truth is worth fighting for, that integrity matters more than comfort, and that sometimes the people who save us come from the most unexpected places. She looked at Xander standing at the edge of the stage. Tonight, I'm proud to announce a new chapter for the Sterling Foundation. We are merging with the Moretti Legacy Fund to create the Sterling Moretti Foundation for Second Chances. The ballroom erupted. Victoria raised her hand for quiet. This foundation will honor 2 legacies. Judge Marcus Ashford, who believed in redemption, and Lucia Moretti, who believed in choosing surprise over expectation. Together, we will fund education, support reentry programs, and prove that people are more than their worst moments. She stepped back from the microphone. The applause was thunderous. Xander met her at the stairs, offered his hand. They slipped away from the crowd, found a quiet terrace overlooking the harbor. The night was warm. The stars were out. Music drifted from the ballroom, soft and distant. "You were brilliant," Xander said. "I had good material to work with." He laughed, pulled her close. They swayed there, barely moving, just holding each other. "Victoria," he said after a while. "Yes." He pulled back just enough to look at her. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out the wooden box. Victoria's breath caught. "6 months ago, Xander said you were sitting on a curb in an alley, and I told you your eyes said otherwise. That they told the truth about who you were." She nodded, unable to speak. "I want to spend the rest of my life reading that truth, learning all the things your eyes say, being the person you see when you look at me." He opened the box. Lucia's ring caught starlight, turned it to promises. "Marry me," he said. "Let me prove every day that your father's faith in second chances wasn't wasted, that love can be braver than fear." Victoria looked at the ring, at his face, at the future he was offering. "Yes," she whispered. The word was certain. Absolute. He slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. When he kissed her, it tasted like redemption and new beginnings and everything right in the world. Behind them, someone cleared their throat. They broke apart. Turned. Isabella stood in the doorway, grinning like a Cheshire cat. "About time," she said. "I've been planning this wedding for 3 months." The wedding happened on a Saturday in May. 6 months of careful planning had led to this. Not the grand society affair Charleston expected. Not 500 guests and cathedral ceilings and photographers capturing every moment for the society pages. Instead, 30 people. The cottage on Kiowa Island. White chairs in the sand, an arch made of driftwood and white roses. Isabella stood as maid of honor in pale blue. Giovanni walked Victoria down the aisle, his arms steady, his eyes bright with tears he refused to shed. When he placed Victoria's hand in Xander's, he whispered, "Lucia would have loved you." "She would have loved you too," Victoria whispered back. The ceremony was simple. Vows they'd written themselves, promises made without flourish or performance. "I promise to choose you," Victoria said every day. "Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard, I promise to see you," Xander said, "the way you deserve to be seen. With wonder and respect and absolute devotion." The minister pronounced them married. The kiss was soft, sweet, full of quiet joy. The reception happened on the porch. Lobster and champagne and laughter that echoed into the dunes. Giovanni made a toast to second chances and the people who give them. As the sun set, Victoria and Xander walked to the water's edge, still in wedding clothes, completely content. "Are you happy?" Xander asked. "I'm home," she said. He smiled. "So am I." They turned back toward the cottage, toward the people who loved them, toward the life they'd chosen. Behind them, the sun disappeared. Ahead, the lights glowed warm and welcoming. And between those 2 points, wrapped in twilight and promise, they walked together. 3 years later, the Sterling Moretti Foundation occupied a renovated building in downtown Charleston. Brick and glass, modern and historic all at once. Victoria stood in her office on the 3rd floor, looking out at the city. The foundation had grown beyond anything she'd imagined. 3 satellite offices, 50 employees, programs in 5 states. Second chances, it turned out, were good business. A knock on the door. Xander appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Board meeting in 10, he said. She turned, smiled. "Still can't believe you let them talk you onto the board. Someone has to keep you honest." He crossed to her, kissed her temple, handed her the coffee. "How are you feeling?" Victoria touched her stomach where the smallest curve was just beginning to show. Nervous? Excited? Terrified? "Normal then," she laughed. "Completely normal. They'd found out 2 weeks ago. Hadn't told anyone yet, not even Giovanni or Isabella. We're still getting used to the idea themselves. A baby, a family, another second chance. He or she is going to be amazing," Xander said. "With you as a mother, how could they be anything else? And you as a father," Victoria countered. "We'll figure it out, like we figure out everything, together. Always," the intercom buzzed. "Ms. Ashford, the board is ready." Victoria set down her coffee, straightened her blazer. Xander caught her hand, turned her to face him. "I love you," he said, "just in case I forget to mention it in the meeting." "You never forget. Still, I love you too." They walked to the conference room hand in hand. Inside, the board was assembled. Margaret Whitmore returned to Grace. Diane Ross, now a foundation spokesperson. Giovanni serving as honorary chair. Isabella heading up communications. Maya Chen, the former assistant who'd been manipulated by Calloway, now working as the foundation's compliance officer. And new faces. People who'd been given second chances and were now giving them to others. Victoria took her seat at the head of the table. All right, she said, let's talk about what's next. And as the meeting began, as ideas flowed and plans formed, she felt it again. That sense of rightness, of purpose, of being exactly where she was meant to be. Later, when the office was quiet and everyone had gone home, Victoria found Xander in the foundation's community room. He was hanging photographs on the wall, new additions to the legacy gallery. One photo showed Judge Marcus Ashford at his bench, gavel in hand, face serious and kind. Another showed Lucia Moretti in her elementary school classroom, surrounded by children smiling like sunlight. What do you think? Xander asked. I think they'd be proud of us. I think you're right. Victoria studied the photos. Two people who'd believed in redemption, who'd proven that mercy was stronger than judgment, who'd changed lives by choosing hope over condemnation. Their legacies lived on, not in monuments or buildings, but in choices, in second chances given and received, in love that refused to be defined by fear. She felt Xander's arms circle her waist, his chin rest on her shoulder. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For seeing me, for staying, for proving that my eyes were right about you. Your eyes said otherwise, he reminded, her voice warm with memory. They said I was worth the risk. They were right, they usually are. She turned in his arms, looked up at him. The man who'd been a stranger in a crowd, who'd become her partner, her husband, her home. What do they say now? He asked softly. Victoria smiled. They say this is just the beginning, and it was.